there, how's it going? Did you enjoy our last video? I hope you did. I had fun hanging out with you and learning. Right now we're going to learn about paintbrushes. So you can see in front of you, you have a chart there with filbert, liner, round, flat, angle, shader wash, fan, natural bristles, and then synthetic. Now you can't see those at the end yet because we haven't panned over to them, but just be patient. The first brush we want to take a look at is called the filbert brush, and that is this brush right over here. In real life, a filbert brush looks like this. It can be shorter and stout like the picture, or it can be very long. And notice how the filbert brush looks rounded on the top and it's kind of long and flat. And you turn it sideways, it's very thin. And you can make it very, very thin. So this is a very good brush for blending, shading. Our next brush is going to be the liner brush. A liner brush looks like a line to begin with. It's long, usually the thing that you hold here, I call it the stem, is very long on the brush and usually not very short. So that way you can get back on your brush like this. And when you do that in your painting, it drags very gently and it's going to leave behind a nice line. If you press down hard, it's going to do something odd. Okay, so this is meant to be a gentle dragged brush, and it's very good for thin, long lines, and it's great at control. So if you're going to go ahead and write a word and something like that, it's terrific. Next one over is the round brush. It can be pointed, like in the picture, or it can be blunt and rounded. Here's an example of a round brush. Notice the top right here, and if you look right down the barrel of it, is rounded. The whole thing is round until you get to the top, and then it kind of gets a little pointy. Another type is this kind of brush, a roundish brush. So it may not be as long, but it is kind of stout on the top, and it's got a rounded area here. This is very good for doing things like stippling, which we'll discuss in another video. And the other brush, the other round, is very good at doing small details or larger details, depending on what you're looking for. All these brushes come in different sizes as well. Here's an example of another filbert brush. Look at how little he is compared to this one. It is about the shape and not necessarily the size. Over here is the flat brush, and that's really good at putting on patches of paint, kind of slapping on paint like so. And it's good sideways, or it's good the long ways. Here's an example of a flat brush right here. This is also an example of a flat brush. Once again, sizes don't really matter. It's the shape of the brush that we're more concerned about when we call it a name. So take a look here and see that a flat brush is literally a brush that looks like a little square or a rectangle, and it is totally flat on the side. It looks very square. And when you drag it across the surface, it lays down like a piece of paper and drags paint with it. Next up is the angle brush. Here is an angle brush. Just like it sounds, the angle brush has an angled head. And that's really good for getting in clean lines on a bumpy surface. And it's good for shading if you use it and it's a longer surface on it. So see how you can drag it across gently at an angle like this instead of holding your arm like this. So it lends itself to nice smooth lines as long as you don't start to turn it. You can see how it would get thick. Next up is a shader or a wash brush. Right here, this brush looks like a flat brush, and it is a flat brush, but it also has plenty of room to hold water or paint. And that's really what a shader or a wash brush does. It's good at blending, but it's good at holding a lot of water and a lot of paint at the same time. Next, we have the fan brush. The fan brush is good for feathering and blending, and it's good for things like creating trees and grasses and clouds, because when you press on it, it can be very organized. So when it goes down, you can tell exactly what's going to happen each time. It's going to do this. Or you can be weird and bop it around and get all kinds of different strange shapes that feel like they're in nature. Now we're going to talk about natural bristles and synthetic bristles. Natural bristles come from nature. They're usually animal hair. As you can see here, this is probably, I'm guessing, boar hair. Basically hair from a pig or a rough animal. And you can see that it's a little wild. It kind of does what it wants, just like real hair. And the surface texture of it, like if you touch it, it feels kind of rough and weird. That's because it comes from nature and it has a little bit of chaos in it. And if it has chaos in it on when you touch it, means kind of wild. When you go to use it, it can do wild things. So if you need something to look wild, this is a really good brush to do, okay? But there's also different types of textures of animal hair. For instance, there's sable or horsehair, and brushes like this that are really, really soft and have a little bit of shine to them are not synthetic. They're natural brushes that come from animals, and those can be very smooth as well. The only thing is, though, is that they tend to be very expensive, and people usually argue about which kind is better. It doesn't really matter, whatever you like. Synthetic brushes kind of feel like plastic or doll hair, but they can do really smooth things because they're manufactured and made by people who control their quality rather than nature. So nature can give you something real wild, or it can give you something real smooth. This is usually kind of cheap. This is usually kind of expensive because of where they have to get it. They have to source it. But if they make it, they can mimic either one, and usually it's a lot cheaper. So synthetic feels like doll hair. It's distinctive and predictable, and it's often much cheaper. Like everything in art, it's up to you, the artist, to be the one to pick your tool. And as you pick your tool, you'll start to learn new ways to use your brush that other people don't really think of. And that's perfectly fine. A tool is a tool is a tool. Use your brush any way you see fit. Just remember that certain brushes, as you'll learn soon, have certain techniques that work best for them. But that doesn't mean you have to use that technique only with that brush.